The Sofabaton U2 universal remote is the less expensive brother to the Sofabaton X1, which I reviewed earlier this year. Coming in at less than half the cost of the X1, I take a look at the performance and the features of the U2 remote to see how it compares. In my previous video about the Sofabaton X1, I talked about how I thought it had taken the crown of the best universal remote from the now defunct Logitech Harmony series. However, at $250, it's a significant sum of money if you're looking for a single device to conveniently control all your home entertainment needs. With that in mind, Sofabaton also make a more affordable universal remote called the U2, which they kindly sent me to check out. U2 is different in a few ways, not only from the design but its functionality. It still supports the thousands of different home entertainment and smart devices, but the remote itself actually features more buttons and as a result is much larger than the X1. The U2 includes an OLED screen at the top, just like the X1, so you can easily navigate between the connected devices. It also includes many more physical programmable buttons, and doesn't require a separate hub to operate, which has its own benefits and detractions. Plus, the U2 runs on AA batteries rather than a rechargeable built-in lithium battery. Ultimately, the U2 is different, but as I discovered, just as feature-rich as the more expensive X1. The difference is really coming down to aesthetic preferences. Inside the box is the remote itself, some complementary AA batteries, and a simple manual, and that's it. The remote has an infrared emitter and Bluetooth radio integrated into the device. The marketing mentions the range is improved over the U1 and is now able to emit an infrared signal up to 35 feet, which is 15 feet more than the older U1 model. Just like the X1, the U2 supports an impressive number of brands and models and devices, all of which are programmable using the app, which I cover off in the next chapter of this video. What's more, the app has some features of the X1. However, it's worth noting that it omits one really useful feature called Activities. Activities on the X1 are where you use an app to program and group actions across multiple devices together into a single button press. All is not lost, however, as macros on the U2 replace the functionality, albeit using a different, slightly more confusing interface. Again, I'll walk through how to set up and use macros later in this video. Setup requires downloading the official Sofabaton app from the Google Play Store for Android devices or the App Store for iPhone. Once installed, you're prompted to connect the remote via the U2 menu option. Then, on the remote, you press the dash and E button on the bottom of the remote to start the Bluetooth pairing process with your phone. One thing to note when programming is that the remote does require a Bluetooth connection to your phone to manage updates, and it can only be connected to one Bluetooth device at a time. If you've connected the remote to a Bluetooth device, like a Google TV, then you'll need to repair the remote to your phone to use the app each time. It's not ideal, but it is a necessary step for technical limitation reasons. Once you've connected the remote to your app, you can then start adding your own home entertainment devices. Just like the X1, you can either search for the brand or model of the device you want to use, or if your device is missing from the Sofabaton database, you can program the remote directly using the original remote. Also, just like the X1, one issue I ran into was the lack of dedicated Google TV support. However, you are able to use the Chromecast profile instead, but it'll miss some functions like the dedicated YouTube and Netflix buttons. Just like the X1, you are able to program back some of the functions and map them on the buttons on the remote. For instance, I use the home button a lot on the original Google TV remote itself to navigate back to the main homepage. However, the function isn't part of the default key map, so it requires some manual programming to add it back. I cover off how to do this in this video a bit later. The remote itself follows a more typical remote design in terms of its overall look. This has the benefit of being more familiar for first-time users. The button layout is pretty much the same as many other devices and other remotes out there. However, at the top of the unit is a small OLED screen where your connected devices are listed. You then use the rubberized wheel to cycle between them and the OK button to select that device. The key map will then change for that device. For instance, until programmed otherwise, selecting your AV receiver will now map the volume controls to the remote, so you can control the sound level. Similarly, selecting your TV will then change the key map to the TV controls. In a later chapter in this video, I explain how to set up the remote so that you can choose one device, but you have control over multiple devices in your home entertainment setup. In terms of the ergonomics, the remote sits nicely in the hand. It's quite wide and long and requires a little bit of hand shuffling to reach all the buttons if you have small to medium-sized hands. Users with larger hands may find it easier to use. However, it's worth noting that all the most important controls are easy to reach with your thumb. Plus, you can also spend time reassigning functions to more convenient buttons. Reprogramming the buttons is managed via the Sofabaton app. Here, you can move functions around the key map to suit your own preferences. If you want to move the play stop button from the default key map, this is where you can reassign it to another button on the remote. To start, you tap on the device you want to edit in the app, and then tap on Remote Keys. You'll be presented with a virtual key map of the remote. The buttons will be colour-coded to let you know which ones have already had functions assigned to them. Green means they are part of the default controls for that device. Blue buttons are functions you've manually trained for the device mentioned earlier. Orange keys are the ones that you've programmed with a macro to perform multiple actions across various devices. And finally, red signifies which buttons are already assigned and mapped for Bluetooth devices. As mentioned earlier in the video, some functions are missing when you're using the Chromecast profile with your Google TV. Using the programming feature, I programmed back the shortcut to use the home button to navigate all the way back to the Google TV homepage. All you have to do is tap on the Chromecast and then Remote Keys. You can then choose any button to reprogram, but I wanted to keep things simple and chose the home button. Tapping on the home button and then reassign Remote Key brings up a list of known functions for the Chromecast. The default for Chromecast is the function called Home, but the actual function for creating the shortcut to exit an app and navigate all the way back to the home page is a function called Homepage. Tapping on that and then Done at the top saves the new assignment. Another adjustment that's required to make the remote behave like a true universal remote is to have the AV receiver controls be accessible while using the Chromecast profile for volume control. By default, each device you add is separate, and you have to navigate between them using the wheel to navigate to their key map. This is less than ideal if you're watching TV using the Google TV but need to navigate to the receiver to control the volume. Then you have to navigate back to the Chromecast profile to change the content. To get around this, you have to assign the receiver volume controls to the Chromecast profile in the app. Do this, you tap on Chromecast, then Remote Keys, then the volume up button. Then tap on Reassign Remote Key. Now on the left hand side, choose your receiver, in this case my Denon, scroll to the volume up command and then select it. Tap Done and then repeat the process for the volume down button. Now when I use the Google TV, the volume buttons will control the receiver without the need to navigate between the devices. Another part of the programmable features for the U2 is the ability to create macros or a string of instructions triggered by one button. One example would be if you have a Blu-ray player connected to your receiver for audio and then relay to your TV. For my own setup, when I press the power button, I want the AV receiver and the TV to turn on and off at the same time. To start, navigate to the device you want to program and then tap on it, and then tap on Remote Keys. Now tap the button you want to assign the macro to and tap the Create Macro for this key. Now tap Add More and you'll be presented with the option to use the existing buttons or the commands database. Using the existing buttons option will enable you to create a macro using a series of buttons on the current key map, including any edits you've already made. Using the commands database enables you to combine actions from your connected devices. For my setup, I first tapped Sony for my Bravia TV, then Remote Keys, then tapped on the power button at the top marked TV as that's the one I want to program. Then tapped on Create Macro for this key. Then tap on Add More and then Commands Database to search for the power toggle instruction. This tells the button to control both the power on and power off rather than just one state, and then Done. Next, I want to switch on my receiver as part of the same button press. Tap on Add More and then Commands Database again. Tap on your receiver and then scroll down and choose Power Toggle and then Done. You'll notice the Sofabaton app automatically puts a half-second delay between the actions. If you tap on the dialog, you can choose to reduce this to instant or increase the delay by up to 10 seconds. Once you're happy with the macro, you tap Save. The button will now turn orange to show that a macro has been assigned to it. I'm really impressed with the U2 remote, even compared to the X1 remote. Considering the price difference, you're only really missing two features unique to the more expensive device. Connecting new devices to your remote is just as easy as the X1 thanks to the official app. The U2 supports all the same devices as the X1, so you're not compromising on functionality. Better still, the U2 is fast and responsive when it comes to interacting with your home entertainment equipment. If anything, the U2 seems a little faster in some instances. The one area that requires more thought and time is using macros rather than setting up activities. The user experience for macros is not quite as intuitive. Once you bend your head around the fact that you use one device profile and add controls for other devices to it, it makes more sense. For my example, I predominantly use my remote with my Google TV, scrolling between content and apps 90% of the time. I only interact with the receiver to change the volume. With that in mind, I set up the power toggle macro for both devices under the Chromecast profile, so there's no need to switch devices. My final note is the more expensive X1 does have quite a significant benefit, which is the hub. As noted in my other video, the remote communicates with the hub, and the hub is the IR blaster. This means that you don't have to point the X1 remote at the device you're trying to control. You just have to set up the hub in a location where it can reach the various devices. And thanks to the infrared emitter extenders, you have a lot of flexibility. In contrast, you do have to remember to point the U2 remote at the device you're trying to control. Overall, I really like the U2, especially for the price point. You're not compromising on any important features. The device itself is really nice to hold and use, plus after some acclimatization, programming macros is pretty straightforward. If you don't have a lot of demands for your home entertainment setup with only a few devices, the U2 is probably all you need. However, if you do need more flexibility or have hard to reach or hidden devices in your home, you might consider the more expensive X1 with its separate hub. Thank you for watching, and as always, it would be great if you were to like the video and subscribe to my channel for more content on personal technology and the connected home.